What's up, football fans? It's Sam here from STB Sports, and today we have our 3/4 of the year fantasy football award show. I'm here with Max and our host, Andrew. Andrew, would you like to get into it?
I would. Let's do it. So, our first award is the Fantasy Draft Steal of the Year. So, this is a player that you probably drafted in the middle of the draft that is performing like a top-tier player.
All right. So, here we have two different wide receivers. We've got Keenan Allen and we have Stephon Diggs. Personally, I would say this award should go to Keenan Allen. He's currently ranked 4th out of all wide receivers in the NFL, and he was usually taken, I believe, in the late 4th round in most ESPN fantasy drafts. So to see that kind of 19.3 point average out of a 4th round pick at wide receiver is really solid. So that's why I think this one should go to Keenan Allen.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Max. I'm going to take a little bit more of a later pick rather than production. Stephon Diggs has put almost identical numbers to Keenan Allen in terms of production, though he was taken a little bit later in most leagues. He was taken around the fifth rounds in terms of like a 12-person league. In PPR, he's averaging 18.0 points a game, which is amazing, especially for how late of a draft pick he was. He was probably my steal of the draft, I'd have to say.
All right, good picks. So next we have the Fantasy Draft Sleeper of the Year. So this is somebody that in your league probably went in the later rounds of the draft that's performing like a middle-of-the-pack player at this point.
All right, so this time we have a running back and a receiver. Those hard-to-find running backs are always good, especially when they come that late in the draft. So that's why for this award, I'm going to go ahead and take Antonio Gibson. He was drafted really late in most ESPN drafts, usually in the last couple of rounds, and he's turned out to be ranked 5th out of all running backs in terms of fantasy production. He's been averaging 16.5 PPR points a game, and he just came off a 3-touchdown monster performance against Dallas. So that's why I'm going to give Antonio Gibson the draft sleeper of the year here.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Max. Antonio Gibson was a very, very late round pick. He was probably maybe 11th round pick at the very earliest. In our league, I believe he was taken in the 12th round. Totally probably the best sleeper in the draft this year. Such a great running back for the Washington football team. He's just been amazing all year. That Thanksgiving Day game was definitely his coming out party. He's going to do wonders for the football team in the next couple of years. Credits to Robbie Anderson. He's been amazing this year, especially for how late of a draft pick he was. He's averaging 15.0 points per game for the Carolina Panthers this year. He's been an absolute stud for those who got him in the late rounds.
Yeah, for sure. He was usually taken in, like the 7th, 8th round. So if you were getting him to put in as like a wide receiver too that late, that's definitely good production.
Yeah, and I know he was one of your picks this year, Max.
He was. Thank you.
All right, good stuff. So next, we have the waiver wire pickup of the year. So this is somebody that probably wasn't even drafted in your league and then started to produce and got picked up and is now performing very well.
All right, so we have James Robinson and Justin Herbert. And I'm going to take James Robinson, and here's why. Running backs are so much harder to find than quarterbacks. A great running back is very hard to come by, especially in PPR leagues, because James Robinson is very active in the pass game for the Jaguars. And he's been an absolute stud all year. He's averaging 18.3 points per game for the Jacksonville Jaguars in fantasy for PPR this year. He's been an absolute stud. He's the running back rank 4 coming off the waivers. He's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think I generally would agree with you. I think James Robinson is probably the person I would pick for this award. But I do think if you weren't able to get James Robinson off the waivers and were able to get Justin Herbert off the waivers, you're probably still pretty happy with yourself, because Justin Herbert, he's a rookie. He did not start week 1. Tyrod Taylor did. So nobody really drafted him in fantasy unless you're like a diehard Chargers fan or something. So when you started to see him get super, super good numbers, that was definitely a great pickup. He's now quarterback ranked 8. He averages 23.5 points. And I believe that his only performance under 20 points was this past week against the Buffalo Bills. So that's been a really good waiver pickup.
Once again, hats off to you, Max. You've been a
Yes,
waiver
sir.
warrior this year.
Uh-huh.
All right. So next we have the fantasy bust of the year. This is a player that you probably thought was going to do really well and then ended up doing very poorly.
All right. So we have Michael Thomas and Saquon Barkley. So I'm going to take Saquon Barkley here. Michael Thomas has been pretty solid, especially in the last game or two for the Saints. But before that, he had been absolutely terrible. He hadn't played for like 8 weeks, and then he scored 5 points and 6 points, which is absolutely terrible for someone who's supposed to be the top 3 wide receiver in the NFL in terms of fantasy, especially because how many catches he gets. But Saquon is definitely the obvious choice here. Second overall pick in most drafts behind Christian McCaffrey, could be third if someone decided to take Zeke ahead of him, who also is starting to bust now. He got injured after the first week of the season. He played 1 week, got, I believe, 6 points in a PPR league. He's been absolutely terrible for everybody who drafted him. So sad to see his injury. But yes, he has been a bust this year.
Yeah, I really don't think I can add much to that, Sam. I do think that Slant Boy himself does definitely need to get a little bit of credit for being the bust of the year. But, yeah, I think Saquon is definitely the number 1 bust just because of how high he was drafted. I mean, he was almost always the 2nd overall pick in the draft. So.
Yeah, pretty much. He was in some cases the 1st overall pick for some people who thought Christian McCaffrey was going to be ahead of him or behind him.
All right. And that was an ACL tear for Saquon, right?
Yes, it was.
All right. So next up, we have the Fantasy Football MVP. This award doesn't need too much explanation, but let's get into it.
So we have Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. So up until the last 2 weeks, 100% Kamara. He was on an absolute tear. I believe he might not have had a single week under 20 points. He's great overall. He's amazing pass catcher, running the ball at an effective rate. He was, I believe, projected over 1,000 yards passing and rushing on the season if he kept up on his current pace. Was an absolute beast. Dalvin Cook, a little bit better rushing the ball than Kamara, a little bit more of a classic running back, and he was absolutely amazing, helping out the Vikings so much. Max, any input?
Yeah, so both these guys have been amazing, obviously. Kamara is currently RB1 in fantasy in PPR, and Dalvin Cook is RB2 in fantasy in PPR. I think they might be switched in non-PPR. Dalvin Cook is 1 and Kamara is 2.
Yes.
But either way, they're the top 2 for basically every league that you're going to be in, Dalvin Cook and Kamara. So really, I can't really pick between these two, especially based on just these past 12 weeks. I think it will be slightly interesting to see where both these guys go, really, because lately Kamara, I think, has had 2 single-digit points efforts in a row. And also Dalvin Cook is coming up on a brutal schedule for fantasy managers to watch out for. But so far through these first 12 weeks, these guys have been by far the best fantasy football players.
Yeah, Max. I believe in the last few weeks, Kamara has only had 1 single-digit points game when that was this past week. And I think the game before he had a double-digit. But in non-PPR leagues, I'm pretty sure it's Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook, number 1 and 2. Just because of how active Kamara is in the pass game, that's pretty much half of his points right there.
All right. Well, I must admit I was a little disappointed that you guys didn't choose Derrick Henry. He's been doing good things for my team, but Next up, we have the fantasy football playoff savior. So this is a player that was injured most of the season and then is coming back just in time for the playoffs, possibly saving the teams that have him.
First of all, I would like to say a thank you to both Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler, my starting 2 running backs for the playoffs. Eckler just came back this week, had 23.6 points or something very high like that with no touchdowns this week. He's going to be amazing for the Chargers, along with Christian McCaffrey, the number 1 overall fantasy pick in almost all leagues. He is going to come back hopefully in week 14. He should be 100% healthy by then. These 2 players, if you have not had your trade deadline, target these 2 players, especially Christian McCaffrey. He is going to win so many fantasy football leagues along with Eckler. If you made the playoffs with these 2 as your starting running backs or hurt all season, you are in good shape.
Yeah, I agree totally. The one thing I'd like to add is just really the value of these guys was their ability to be bought so low. I think both these guys, if you had enough depth, if those guys hit IR, then you could trade for both of them fairly early in their injuries and not have to give up very much. And now just when you really need them, they're both going to come back. And I mean, if you had to ask me, I would say they're both probably going to score at least like 18 points for the rest of the year every game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and McCaffrey is pretty much a lock for 20, 25 plus points. Eckler's probably a lock for at least 18 plus, like you said. Yeah, I got really lucky. I bought low on McCaffrey after one of Zeke's bad weeks and traded Zeke away, and I got Eckler in a trade with, I believe, DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. So hats off.
Sam's been making moves, man.
Yeah.
I know. Sam's just trying to flex on us now, Max.
For real.
I've been the trade warrior this year. All right. So that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching the Fantasy Football Awards Show. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern Time to see our STB Sports Special Awards Show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and have a great day. Peace.